Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be here with you again. To share another word, another message that the Lord has put in my heart. As usual, just praying that this will help you in your walk if you've now begun your walk with Him. Even for those who may simply be questioning this whole thing about spiritual life, what it's about, that this will also open your mind to something new, something different. So, if you've seen the title is those inconvenient blessings. Alright? And as usual, just wanna, give a practical example so we can kind of understand what I'm saying. Alright? So we know, when children are small, when they are young, as parents, as adults, as guardians, we provide all of their needs and their wants. Right? And once we know there's a need, there's a want, it's given to them. Alright, there's no questions really asked there, except the want is something that it really is useful or dangerous to them. But as they grow and they become more capable, we still provide these things to them, but now they play a part in the process. Okay? So, for example, we may still wash their clothes, right? Put it in the washing machine or the dryer. But now they have to fold it. Alright? We may still buy, whether it be phones or tablets or computers. We may still give them funding if they want to go out with friends, and all these different things. But even for that, there are certain responsibilities that we expect them to fulfill, right, in order to receive those things. Alright, whether it be keeping their rooms clean, whether it be keeping up their grades, okay, whether it be doing their chores, alright, around the house. Alright, so in this way now, these blessings that we give to them or that they seek from us are not just blindly given to them. Alright, but they have a role, okay, and they now have to put in some sort of effort into it. Okay, they may have to sacrifice time and give up other things, to be able to attain these things in the full way. And in doing that, it may now become inconvenient to them, because before, well, just ask mommy and daddy for this, or and I will get it, or if I need clean clothes, I just go into my drawer and I have folded clothes there. I can find everything is organized and neat and nice. But now, yes, we still do a part of it, but they have a part to play. Right? They have a part to play. And the same thing happens to us sometimes when we seek God for something and He doesn't just drop it into our lap. Okay, He brings it to us in a way where there's some part that we have to play. Alright? And now it doesn't mean that God cannot supernaturally provide our needs and our wants. He can do that, and He does do that at times. But many times there's something that we need to do from our side. Okay? Something He wants us to learn, some area He wants us to develop to then attain these things. And when it comes like that, it may sometimes seem as an inconvenient thing, because we just want it. We need it. We want it. Just give it to us, Lord, one time. And it tends to feel as if it's inconvenient because we have to do it, because we have to deal with whatever we may have to deal with. Yeah. So from this, I want to look at some examples in the Bible where there were blessings being given, there were opportunities there, that were inconvenient, that were inconvenient, that may have been deemed or looked upon as inconvenient. And I want to look at the different responses that the individuals or the groups had, when they accepted it, when they didn't accept it, right? And what happened from there, the benefits and the consequences. Alright, so we're gonna start firstly in Numbers 14, verse 2 and 3, and then verse 20 to 23. So, it says, Numbers 14 verse 2 and 3 says, all the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? So this is the point where the 12 spies, this is where Israel had passed through the desert. They were seeing they had come to the promised land for the first time. Okay, God sent 12 spies into the land to spy on the land, right? And even though 2 of those spies, yes, said everything is perfect, everything is good, and God will get us through, the others said no. And now the Israelites were saying, listen, they were rejecting the promised land at this point in time. Why? Because they had to do something. Right? They were being called to do so. It wasn't just walk into the promised land. Everybody who's there is going to be dead. You just move the bodies and you enjoy it. No, there was something that they had to do. They did not want to step up there. Sadly so. Alright. When we look at verse 20 to 23, we see, of course, the effect of this. The Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked, because God was literally just going to destroy them and rebuild through Moses and Aaron, by the way. But anyhow, the Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. Now, God was talking about the adults at that point in time, who were that adult generation in Israel. So basically he said, listen, you asked me to save you out of Egypt. I've done so. Brought you out of Egypt, taken you through the Red Sea, brought you to the promised land. This is the land here. You're rejecting it, so okay, no problem. None of y'all who are of age to understand what happened in Egypt, what I did in the wilderness, right? When you pass through the desert to get here, none of y'all will step into the promised land. Only Caleb and Joshua, which were the 2 spies who said, yes, we need to go, were the ones who got that opportunity to go in 40 years later, of course. Alright, so we see the blessing was right there for them. It was God said, this is the land, step over, I'm going to organize, and he not only let them see it from afar, he sent people to search out the land. 40 days the spies spent in the land, going all throughout, looking to see. They brought back, right, different fruits and so on from the land, so the people could see how great it really was. They rejected it. They didn't want to do the work, so they lost that opportunity. The same thing happens to us sometimes, right? When we ask God for guidance on, our job, our profession, where He wants us to go, where He wants us to use our skills, and He will show us something. Sometimes maybe a small little company He wants us to join, sometimes He said, listen, I want you to do this on your own, set up this business, start this service, start doing this product. And we say, what? Lord, are you, no, that's not what I wanted. Put me in a big company, you understand? Set me up in a big restaurant. Okay, let me work with somebody who already has something big, so I'll be sure about, about my income and all that I need. God is saying, yeah, but you don't think I know the best way to give you more than you even asked me for right now? Basically, it's inconvenient for us to take that particular opportunity because a small company, oh gosh, we had to work hard, we had to help the company build up. Okay, starting a business is not easy. Okay, it's not easy. Bringing out a new service, a new product, those things are not easy. It takes time, it takes effort. Alright? But there's a reason why God would want us to go through that situation. But again, it's inconvenient to us. No, we want it now. We want the financial stability now. We want the blessings now. We want the comfort now. Okay, so Lord, I'm very sorry. That blessing that you're trying to give to me, this opportunity, that's not the one I want. So I'm very sorry. Bring something else. And what happens? We may never get another chance, alright, to take up that opportunity. Or if we do get a second chance, it may be very, very difficult. Because that time that God said, take it, alright, things would have been set in place and ready. And we'll actually see that. Right? We'll actually see that when we look at when Israel accepted the promised land the second time around. Okay? But again, many times we seek God for guidance on certain things, certain areas of our life, and when He shows us what we need to do, we say, "No, Lord, I'm sorry. This is not how I envisioned it, so I'm not going to take it. That's not convenient to me. I don't want to put out any work. Okay, I don't have the time. I don't have the, I can't do it that way. Okay, because that's crazy." But we know why God asks us to do things that seem crazy, so that He will get the glory. Alright? Now let's see the difference now when all those persons died off and it was time for them to enter the promised land. Again, Joshua chapter 1 verses 2 and then verse 10 and 11. Alright. Verse 2 says, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all the people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites." Okay, so this is God now speaking to Joshua, saying, "Alright, Joshua, all those people who were doubting, they're gone now. It's time for you all to step in." Look at the response now, verse 10 and 11. "So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, 'Go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own.'" He didn't stick. No questions asked. Alright, Lord, it's time. Let's go. Let us go. Alright, and I want to share Joshua 2 verse 10 and 11 to show you how things were already set in place the first time Israel got to the Jordan. Right? The first time when God told them go, and they said no. Listen to this. Joshua 2 verse 10 and 11. It said, "We have heard," this is Rahab, one of the people in Jericho, one of the women in Jericho. Alright. "We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below." So since the first time that the people of Jericho heard the story, right, about the Israelites being freed from Egypt, their hearts melted and everyone's courage failed. So the land of Jericho was set up since then, since that first time, for them to walk inside. Imagine that, to simply step over. But we know this time when they took it up, what happened? Jericho was the first land, right? One of the walled cities that they had to go against. Alright, and we know God didn't take up that battle in the normal way. He caused them to walk around the city 7 times. Alright, and then the walls fell down. So He did most of the work. Okay? So again, when we accept these opportunities that God brings to us, no matter how hard it may seem, no matter how crazy, no matter how many people tell you no, all right, if you're seeking God for guidance, if you're seeking God for blessings, for breakthrough in your life, all right, okay, if it's something if it is something great, understand it's probably going to be opportunity that comes, maybe something where you have to step out in faith. Okay? One, because God wants glory. Okay? And two, if it's something where you have to step out in faith, understand it's going to be a great blessing. As inconvenient, as hard, as crazy as it may seem, okay? Understand, whatever you've been seeking Him for, that is the way He's going to get it to you. So do not reject it. Because if He says to do it, He has already set things in place. Alright. Let's look at another story. You look at 1 Samuel 16 verses 19 to 23. It says, Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, Send me your son David, who is with the sheep. So Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them with his son David to Saul. David came to Saul and entered his service. Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his armor bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, Allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him. Whenever the Spirit from God came on Saul, David would take up his lyre and play. Then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. Okay, so this is after King Saul had lost the blessing as king. The blessing had been placed on David, so Saul was going through some rough times. Alright, his servant said, Listen, there's a boy who plays the lyre beautifully. God is with him. Bring him and let him play for you. Alright, so Saul sent for David, not knowing David had already been anointed the new king. Alright, but he brought him in knowing, listen, God is with him. Alright, God is with him. And David would play the lyre and relief would come to Saul. Let's see another part of that. A little bit further down. 1 Samuel 17:37. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hands of this Philistine. That's David telling Saul when he was going to deal with Goliath. Saul said to David, Go, and the Lord be with you. Okay, we know what happened. David went out, defeated Goliath, great victory for Israel, for David, and for King Saul as king. So we see where King Saul accepted David into his presence. Why? Because God was with him. He understood that. He recognized that. He was told that. He recognized it when David would play the lyre for him and he would feel better. And he recognized it when David came to him and said, Listen, I could go and handle Goliath for you. And he said, You go, the Lord be with you. And every time he accepted David, okay, knowing that God was with him, he benefited from it. Alright? Same thing with us. Alright? Sometimes we ask God, to help us to understand, help us to become better. And He doesn't just magically do it. He may put somebody in our lives who has the abilities, who has reached the level that we want to reach. Alright? And that's our opportunity to learn from that person. And the more we draw closer to that person, the more we will learn, the more we will grow and receive that blessing, that understanding, that whatever it is we're looking for, we get it through that person, from spending time with them. seeing what they do. Alright? But what happens when we reject? Well, let's see. Let's see. Alright. 1 Samuel 18, 10 to 15. Okay. The next day and Eve, so this is after, alright, Goliath and all these different things. Alright. The next day an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre as he usually did. So David doing what he normally doing, trying to bring peace and tranquility to Saul. Saul had a spear in his hand and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. Very interesting that, eh? Eluded him twice. So Saul threw the spear at you. You elude it. You don't run away. You stay there to have to elude it a second time. Anyhow, that's just to show the love David had for Saul. Eh? Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David but had departed from Saul. So he recognized now that David was actually higher than him on that spiritual level. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men. And David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. You're talking about the person who would play this instrument and bring peace to you. Right? You're talking about the person who stepped out and got a great victory for you and continue to do so. You're talking about the person who, even when you attacked them the first time, they still didn't turn away, they still didn't reject you. You attacked them a second time, he was still there. King Saul had to send David away. That's what he had to do. David was willing to stay. He was willing, even though David himself knew he was the real anointed. He was now the anointed king. But what, he was still willing to be there. He was still willing to help and do great things for who? For King Saul. On behalf of King Saul. Every victory that David won, yes, he would get, he would receive praise for it, but it also went up to the top. Back to King Saul, that things were still great, that the kingdom was still protected. Alright? But he was so afraid of David because David was higher than him. He didn't think, let me learn from this boy. How is it that God has put the blessing on him? How is it that God has anointed him king over me? Maybe if I try to learn, maybe if I try to do better, And all this time King Saul is just rejecting all the blessings he's getting through having David in his life. And that's a very sad thing because we do the same. So we ask God to show us, to guide us, to make us better. He sends somebody in our life who can do that. And because we see this person as being better than us and higher than us, instead of drawing close to them to learn and to become better, we reject them. Alright? We start to bad talk them. We start to look down and we say, oh, they feel it better than me and all these different things. All this time missing out on the blessing. Why? Because we do not want to humble ourselves. Listen, the only way to learn and continue to learn is to humble yourself. If you cannot humble yourself, you would think you know it all. You would think you're better than everybody else. You'll never get better in anything. You want to be wiser, you want to be more patient, you want whatever you want to be. Right? Humble yourself and learn from other people. Okay? Deal with the situation in the right way. But we don't want that. God give me patience. Right? So when you wake up in the morning, you just expect to be patient with everybody. Don't take away this anger. So you just expect that when people get you vexed, you're not going to get it. No. You build patience through going through situations where you need patience. So you make the choice to be patient, to hold your tongue, to not say anything, to not get vexed, to not try to prove yourself right. You just humble yourself. And little by little, you will learn from those around you. And not reject them as if they're trying to be better than you. But again, you see, that's inconvenient. Why I must humble myself and why I must sit under this person and learn from them and follow them. I am God tell me I'm going to be big. So why I must sit under anybody else? What the Bible says, what? If you want to be great, what you have to do? Serve. Because when you serve, what happens? You learn from that person who's on that level. I'm sure there's still something David would have learned from King Saul, even though Saul would have lost the anointing as king. That's probably why God put him in there, right? To help Saul. There's something he would have learned from him. And David was willing to stay knowing Saul wanted to destroy him. Twice David had to elude the spear, you know. I didn't even remember that. Twice he had to elude the spear. So it means he dug the spear. Somehow, whether he take the spear out and give it back to Saul, or somebody took the spear, give it back to Saul, and he stayed right there doing the same thing. That's humility. That is humility. But are we willing to do that? To be humble? To sit, worse yet, David had to sit under somebody who he knew had lost their true position, who he knew he was going to be bigger than. But he had to humble himself. Very inconvenient for us at times, because we just want to step up. We just want to step and get higher than other people. We don't want to learn from them. Nah, God tell me, I asked God to be the owner of this business, right? To set me up. So God just had to take everybody out of my way. No. We don't feel God is going to tell us, listen, get close to that person whose position you want. And not close just to take their position. No. Close. Let them teach you, learn from them, so that what will happen? That same person will now recommend you for that position that you want. Amazing, eh? But we don't want to do that. It's not convenient. Because we don't want to humble ourselves. Alright? Your choice, eh? Your choice. The last thing. Luke 22, verse 60 and 62. It says, Peter replied, Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord Jesus had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. He went outside and wept bitterly. Why did Peter reject Jesus? Because in that day, Jesus went against everything, right, that was acceptable, but that he knew that was wrong. He went against the grain. He wasn't going with the flow. He wasn't going with the flow. But he was prospering. But he was bringing more and more people to God. But he was going against the flow. Now Peter knew that Peter was there. Peter was walking with it. But when things became hard, and people wait, you wasn't. Peter was like, no, that, I don't really know him, you know. Maybe I was wrong. I saw him pass a couple times, but I don't really know. That was the greatest blessing Peter could have ever had in his life, walking with Christ. And Peter rejected it. we do the same thing. Lord, help me with this. Lord, show me how to, you know. And we do that, and God put the most random, strangest person in our life. That person has achieved everything we asking for, everything we want. But because they don't do it the way the world is doing, because everybody watch them like they're strange, nah. We will listen to them quietly, eh? Right? We will talk to them via WhatsApp, via messages. But out in the open, nobody knows that's your friend. Ah, strange, eh? Strange. Why? Because it means what? We now have to go against the flow. But that's not what we want. God, we want great blessings. We want to do great things. We want to be powerful. But don't make us stand out, please. No, we don't want to stand out. We don't want people to talk bad about us. We don't want people to feel bad when we talk to them. No, 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 no. We just want to go with the flow and reach a high level. Well, if you want to reach a high level with God, you have to go against the flow. The Bible said we are in the world but not of the world. We cannot use the principles of the moral principles of the world to get anywhere when it comes to the things of God. If we want to be truly successful, and we see where many of the biblical principles go totally against what the world says we have to do. Love your enemy. What? Nah. You had to be mad. Oh gosh. But you want peace in your life, right? You want peace in your life? Love your enemy. Turn your enemy into your friend. Because if you run away from your enemy, wherever that person may be, in your community, in your job, in your house, wherever you go, another enemy will just pop up. So you're running your whole life, when what you simply need to do is deal with that person with love. But that's not what the world says. That's not what the world says. Yeah? The world says bring down your enemies, destroy them so they can't do you nothing. Peter wept bitterly. He understood what he did. He understood. Well, let's see. When the time came and he said yes. Right, that's John 21, verse 15 to 17. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. Because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. So finally, Peter, he wasn't under as much pressure as before. It wasn't random people like Jesus was asking. Finally, he was like, yes, Lord, I love you. You know that I love you. He felt bad, eh? Maybe he remembered these 3 times that he rejected Jesus. Alright. He still felt a little bit bad. But when he said, yes, Lord, I love you. When he said yes, right, I'm connecting myself to you. I'm not rejecting you anymore. Then what did Jesus do? Jesus said, well, okay, well, feed my sheep. Take care of my sheep. Watch over my sheep. He was promoting him. He was giving him exactly what Peter was looking for while he was walking with Jesus. To be like him. Because that's what Jesus was doing. Taking care of the sheep. Watching over them. Feeding them. Word. And this is what Peter stepped into after that. Because he was finally willing to say yes. And after that, well, we know what happened to him by saying yes and by following Christ. He was willing to deal with it at that point in time. And that's what we have to do. These strange people, these strange strange ways God will ask us to do things. Alright? And He will ask us to go out there and speak about Him and show people His love. That's the only way we could achieve what we're asking God for. It is going to be inconvenient. People are going to laugh at you. People are going to talk bad about you. Okay? And I ain't talking about random strangers, eh? I talking about family members too. But wait, but you want these things from God? But this is what you're going to have. That's the inconvenience you're going to have to pass through. Alright? To attain it. The blessing is there, you know. This is just a process. Okay? And it's going to seem inconvenient, feel inconvenient. But trust me, if you want the greatest that God has for you, this is what you're going to want to do and the way you're going to want to do it. So keep that in mind. Okay? So that was the message for today, and I pray that the Lord will, that this will help you in your walk when you see those inconvenient blessings pop up. Understand why it is there. God wants to help you to grow. He wants to help you to be stronger. He wants you to step out in faith. Okay, He wants you to go against what the world says is the best and the easiest and the most profitable way to do it. Because He wants glory in every single thing that we do. So, thank God for the opportunity as usual. I pray that He will continue to watch over you, guide you, and keep you safe in every area of your life and all that you're doing. In Jesus' name.